toss it over to Kim.
Thank you, Kelly, and all of you. Thank you for showing up for yourselves. I know it's no small thing because you're in a profession where you put others first. And I know that you have more to do in any given day than you can do in that day. So to actually take the time to be here is part of you actually managing priorities and showing up for yourself, which is hard. And I'm so glad that you're doing this. Let me actually put my screen in presentation mode. Sorry about that. So today we're going to talk about managing priorities. And this one, I think, was an add-on from your own feedback, or at least when we were setting it up. And I loved pulling this information together for all of you. And I thought about it too in a coaching context for managing priorities and finding peace and productivity. Like, how do we do that without, again, pushing ourselves aside over and over and over again? How do we do it in the best way, efficiently, but also feeling good about life? So as a coach, specifically well-being coach, and now people are using the term well-being and understanding it. I'm even adapting along with that because there's an understanding about what that means, maybe not how to get there, but what it means is I should be well. And if I'm well, other things fall in place. I can do well at work. I can do well in my family. I can feel good about my life. And that last part's really important because I think culturally we have this, if I feel bad, I'm doing good. If I feel resentful, exhausted, depleted, I'm doing well in life. And these moments are your life. And so there's a way to do good and feel good, and it matters. How you feel matters. So especially as we're coming to the end of 2022, I want you to keep that in mind as you go forward into 2023. So how I've organized this is obviously how to find peace and productivity. When there's never enough time, there's never enough time. And so managing a mindset around that and getting comfortable with that, so that's not an additional stressor. I'm going to talk about managing priorities, a couple of techniques, time management, because they're not the same. They are two things. There's maybe some overlap, but they're actually two different components. And so I'll give you a couple time management tools as well. Talk about a coaching perspective. So even sort of put in a thought, a new perspective. I think perspective is also something that helps you find peace and productivity. And then also a note on holiday stress. It's a time of great joy. It's a time of great pain too, for a lot of reasons. So want to leave you with some coaching thoughts around that as well. So when we start with prioritization, though, I have three I'm going to talk about. There were tons that I could talk about, but I picked up three: eat that frog, the 1-3-5 rule, and the Eisenhower decision matrix, which sounds very sophisticated, right? So, and actually too, right now, if you're able to put in the chat, like on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're willing to kind of measure your own success in prioritizing, it might vary day to day. I know it does for me. Like, how good am I at prioritizing? You know, some days I'd give myself a 1, which is very low score, a 10, very high. Throw in the chat how you feel you do and prioritizing things, and without judgment. Like it's absolutely something we struggle with all the time, I think, especially when we think a whole bunch of things that are screaming at us at once. How do you prioritize that? So I'm just take a peek here at what we have. Yeah, the time management, setting boundaries, just say no. Yeah, that's a really good one. It's hard. A lot of things are screaming for our attention. Yep, so getting some numbers here. Thank you for sharing that. I like the 1 to 10 scale just as a self-coaching tool for yourself. To think about that. Sometimes when you want to make things clearer, you can just do that. You can actually 1 to 10 it, 10 being very good, or very high, 1 being low. So definitely love that. Love some of the techniques you put in the chat. And appreciate you thinking about that. Oh, okay, so starting with eat the frog, eat that frog. I keep wanting to call it the frog. It's that frog. It's kind of the concept of worst thing first. And it's based on the quote from Mark Twain that you see here. If you eat a live frog first thing in the morning, nothing worse will happen to you the rest of the day. And that frog being the thing that you would probably procrastinate, the thing that might overwhelm you. You just tackle that first thing in the morning when you have the most energy. That's the first part of your day. Brian Tracy wrote a book of the same name, and some of you may be familiar with it, but it's interesting because if you have multiple frogs, it says to pick the ugliest. And I know that this resonated with me, but in the reverse. Like, I don't pick the frog. I don't eat that frog. I tend to do the easier things first. So for me, even this one was counterintuitive, and it might be for you as well, sort of counterintuitive, but this kind of gives us an image. That's a really cute frog here, but if you need to pick the ugliest, you might have 10 frogs on any given day. Another method is the 1-3-5 method, which I think is nice and simple. Again, these are prioritizing, not necessarily time management skills. Begin each day assuming you can only accomplish 1 big thing, 3 medium things, 5 small things. This could arrange it so that you're staying in touch, and thinking about that frog actually is like, the big thing is often much more maybe time consuming. So it's not all even, but we can't always be doing a big thing and never the little things, because I think any one of you could maybe relate to the fact that those little things will add up. If you're good at tackling the big thing, the little tasks can get overwhelming. It's the kind of thing where me as an entrepreneur, I might be postponing my bookkeeping or my receipt tracking or things like that. Those are little things that add up. And then a small task that may be administrative can become overwhelming. Interesting thing about 1-3-5 too is you can adapt it to 1-2-3, 1 big, 2 medium, 3 small. This is especially good for people who spend most of their day in meetings. And if any of you can relate to that, spending a lot of time in meetings makes getting things accomplished outside of meetings very difficult. Like, when do you have the work time? So to be able to adapt it, it may only be 1 big thing, 2 medium things, and 3 small things if you spend most of your days in meetings. Now, the Eisenhower method, a little bit more sophisticated and named because it was a bit of the brainchild of the late President Eisenhower. And Stephen Covey talks about this kind of a system as well in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's taking urgent, not urgent, and not important and important, and organizing it for you, because we can't always be taking urgent and then never get to the other things. This is similar to what I was saying in 1-3-5. We can have things that are not important, that maybe don't necessarily have a deadline, and then constantly keep putting them or packing them in the closet, letting them pile up. So we want a sort of balance in our prioritization. So the things that are urgent and important, you do first. You're focusing on these things that have the clear deadline now. And for all of you, you're probably thinking about what that is, and it's coming at you, and you probably have no choice. These are the things that are, right in front of you from a work perspective. Then the not urgent, these are scheduled things. Maybe there's later deadlines, maybe there's no deadlines. And one tool there is you can put your own deadlines on things. Things that are urgent but not important, maybe those are things that you delegate in some way. So that's going to vary with your jobs and your perspectives, who that might be. Might also apply to how you manage priorities at home. Are there other people in your life that you can ask to do certain things? We know that when I ask groups whether they like to ask for help, no one raises their hand. There's kind of an awkward pause there. So we know that we don't like to ask for help, but if there are ways to delegate, to be strategic and think about what those are. And then the stuff that you don't do. This is low-hanging fruit for coaches, is how do we take someone who's extremely busy, extremely packed, extremely loaded up, and find any capacity for anything new, is actually not forgetting to focus on what are the things you're not going to do? What are the things that waste your energy, waste your time, and maybe have very little impact or no impact at all? So this leads us to some time management strategies. So those are three prioritization type of strategies. Time strategies, time management. I have three here, and they're pretty simple, and I wanted to keep it simple, is the Pomodoro technique. This is based on, well, the tomato Pomodoro, but like an egg timer, a kitchen timer that's in the shape of a tomato, but also Pomodoro is a piece of time, a segment of time. So the Pomodoro technique is to set a timer. You don't need like that kitchen timer or anything that looks like a Pomodoro. You can just put at your phone, any timer on 25 minutes as an increment, and do that task for 25 minutes. At the end of 25 minutes, when the bell rings, you take a break, you get up, you move, you might eat something healthy, move your body, and then you'll go back and do 25 minutes again, either on the same task or on another task. And this is any task, so this is not a prioritization. You could do this on big things, small things, whatever you wish it to be. And an important thing, a less important thing that needs to get done. What you can do too is then build. So you, after say 4 rounds or 5 rounds of Pomodoro, where you do 25 minutes, you move, then you move, you stretch, you do something, you take a break. It's a short break, maybe a 10-minute break. When you get 4 or 5 of those together, then you take a longer break and in between. And it really helps to get you focused and moving and on what it is that you want to accomplish, and you start to accomplish things. One note too is that if your tasks have a different time frame than 25 minutes, feel free to adjust it. It could be 40 minutes. If whatever that, like a lot of things that you do are in those increments or hour-and-a-half increments, that's fine too. Adjust it to fit the way you work. Time blocking strategy is literally just blocking your calendar. I use this a lot. If I need to do something and I need focused time, and considering the fact that I know that multitasking in my head is not the best, that is really taxing on your brain. We do it when we need to, but you don't want to do multitasking all the time. It's almost like we're skimming life and we're straining our brain, because it's actually task switching, and your brain is switching tasks a lot, and that's hard on the brain. So time blocking, if you want focus, block your calendar for things other than meetings, and block it to do a task. You might also block or pull together and gather things that make sense to do together, such as, I'm going to check all my emails between 8 and 9 in the morning. For me, I'm a coach and I'm in session, so it can go a while before I can get back to emails or have a chance to look at them. And so I naturally tend to block time. spend some time in emails, not always plucking in and out of things. Block time to write things if I have to write or create a presentation like this. So use your calendar strategically for time as well. And certainly that's how we can get things done that we tend to procrastinate. If you have people in your doorway a lot, if you have tons of meetings, you want to use a blocking system, because when do you get work done? And does it flop over into doing a lot of administrative work, maybe in your off hours? And then the third, simply the 1 minute rule. I'm not good about this. And this is also a good reminder for me. If something takes a minute or maybe even a couple minutes, the theory is to just do it. Don't put it on a list. I tend to want to put it on a list so I don't forget. And if you're list people out there, which I'm sure a lot of us are list makers, you do want a larger list to make sure that you're not forgetting things, but you don't want to put things that you can just get done on a list, because then the list can become overwhelming in and of itself, and you could have just gotten that right off your plate and right out the door. So again, 3 time management strategies. Now, this was something that I really thought creatively about. And when it comes to perspective, and maybe taking it away from specifically the managing of priorities of the time management of strategies that are out there in books and theories that you can look at, read, if any of those resonated with you and you feel like that's something you want to address more. I thought about perspective, and simple is good. So when I'm a coach, I try and take really complicated situations that clients are in, and what I do find more often than not is it's extreme, like overload, potentially overwhelm, overflowing responsibilities at home and at work. So I thought of a rule of 3. And rule of 3, again, years ago, I was in communication before I was a coach. So 3 is huge. Three we can remember. 3 points of anything is great in communication. So I kind of have a rule of 3, and I organized it in pie, pyramid, and puzzle. And these were my own mental images about how I think about the whole of my life. Because one of the things is stepping back and looking at the big picture is a good time management and prioritization strategy. And so I was wondering which one might resonate with some of you in terms of how you picture your life and all of your responsibilities. So I'm going to start with the pie. Now, these slices are equal, except for the one where I pulled it out, and they may not be equal. That's custom to anyone as to what those slices of pie look like. But if I were to simplify with that rule of 3, I thought there's like career, our work, there's our home, and then ourself. And we don't want to forget ourselves. Slightly different. There's an overlap in both places. Obviously, yourself is at home and with friends and family and loved ones, and anything you need to do there, even literal things you need to do. But then there's your work. Yourself is in both of those places, but also we know how important self-care is. So we don't want you to get to a point where there's like no you, and that and this is what people sometimes get with when they are kind of hit a wall, maybe burnt out. There is no them, because it just hasn't been making the list of to-dos, is to spend time for your own self, your own personal growth, to feel good. A red flag that you're not spending enough time with self is that you feel really exhausted and depleted and resentful. So the green slice is imagining, again, a rule of 3, which is thinking on a day, a week, a month, what is it that I want to do? Now, we make lists to organize our thoughts about all the things we have to do. But I was thinking pulling out, let's say for today, and making a bit of a sandwich, if you will, around your to-do list, without forgetting to set an intention, like what is my intention for today or any time period, this week, this month, this year. And then also after the to-do list and all the things that we know to do, our human doingness, right? The human beingness is, and then remembering gratitude. So if we make this sandwich where we set an intention, our life goes where our intention and attention goes, making the list, and then always remembering gratitude, we can manage feeling better about life. And that this would be a way to organize it in your head about all the responsibilities rather than feeling a sense of overwhelm, kind of more of the overflowing cup. Another way, and again, these are just 3 different perspectives, and I'm going to ask you after I give the 3 to see which one resonates most with you, is the perspective of pyramids. So the pyramid, in this one, you do see where the slices are different sizes, that it is family, friends, home is like this solid base holding you. It's like a good foundation. If anyone's familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're familiar with their safety, security, home, food, water is on the bottom, and we can't even get up to self-esteem and self-actualization if we don't have a good solid base. So I kind of have this more as a picture of the base. Then the work being, we spend a lot of time at work, a really huge chunk of our lives. And then that self, like making sure that we pull out of those 2 places, still having some time to either be alone and recharge, do something we love, to be refilling our cup. We cannot give from an empty vessel. So in here too is that rule of 3, which is, pick that time period that you want to reflect and organize, maybe use a rule of 3 to pick three things that are extremely important to you in this area, or specific tasks in this area, depending on how you want to use the pyramid. And then making sure you have an intention on how you want to live, so that you keep your eye on the prize of how you want to feel, how you want to live, your values, and then the gratitude for things that are working in your life. If you've attended other sessions, you remember that I say our brain has a negativity bias, and you do a lot of problem solving, and you're all really good problem solvers. Our brain is a magnificent instrument for that, but it has evolved to pay more attention to the problems and keep you in your problems. So often we have to do our own self-coaching around pulling our brain to the positive. And this is a season where we do gratitude quite often, but really gratitude's a coaching tool all the time for you. It's at your ready if you're feeling awful, emotionally, feeling drained, depleted. You have probably been working on problem areas too much, and you want to pull your brain to the good because there are things working in your life, and you should put your brain upon that. It's a way for you to recover from that feeling depleted and maybe resentful or just bleak or gloomy, or the future is going to be more of the same if it's been bad. We kind of can get into ruts that way. And the third, I thought of this, I guess maybe because this one resonates with me, is when I think about prioritizing and time management, in some ways I think of it as a puzzle. At the end of our lives, we're looking at like the completed puzzle of this big picture of our lives. And what happens is sometimes there's things screaming at us, and we spend a lot of time in these areas, but then there are a lot of times that we want to be plucking away. And this speaks to balance for me personally, like this kind of balance where I'm doing family, I'm doing work. So I kind of color coded these beautiful puzzle pieces as like, there's family time sprinkled in here, but there's work sprinkled into any given day, any given month, any year. There's friends. Am I making time to show up for my friends? Or do I feel so depleted by home and work that I don't have time to recharge myself with their energy and that good feeling. Some self-care. Am I making sure that's sprinkled in there as a puzzle piece? Am I, doing some recreation? So that could be physical fitness. It could be a hobby. It could be fun. Those, again, recharging pieces for self-care. And then, sort of those blanks are like, what's coming up next? And in this way, it's like I have this balance. So I'm going to have this full picture at the end of my life. So just another way to have a perspective about what resonates most with you. And so before I get to holiday stress, though, if people want to chat about which one of those perspectives resonates most with you in the way you think about the important pieces of your life and how you arrange it in your mind with your time and your priorities. Just kind of throw that in the chat. We've got a puzzle. I like the puzzle myself. Definitely. Simplicity is good too. So as a coach, I want to, remind people, when in doubt, when we're not feeling right about things, we do want to get to the simple, like simplify things. Life is very complicated. We have a lot of complexity in our society. So that can get, the way I feel it is it's all scrambled. So, we've got a pie, nice, with moving pieces, right? And they're, changing size too, because we have, sometimes the home requires more of us, sometimes work requires more of us. And then the pie too, that kind of like those moving pieces that you mentioned, Lori, I love that, is understanding that you are, if you've had to really bring it at work and do a lot of work and you're feeling guilty about home, there's a time when there's more home than work and more work than home, to know that each day is a new day and not to spend too much time beating yourself up. That's not good for any of us. Another pie, terrific. Yeah, and just another note, on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is in the 1960s, it was kind of the first step. I think it may have been the first step towards positive psychology, which is a lot of coaching, is that positive psychology as opposed to abnormal psychology, clinical diagnoses, that type of thing. Was people can't be their best. They can't be self-actualized without having those other layers of the pyramid supporting them, which is food, water, shelter, clothing, safety, and security. Then you can build self-esteem. Then the self-actualized part is that person that's willing to grow, fail, learn, explore. Maybe they go deeper into something they love to do. We can't be that person if we don't have food and shelter and safety. So great note on that. A puzzle, sometimes pyramid is one of the comments. That's great. Make time and work through your needs. Absolutely. So love that you were willing to share some of that thought. I just want to throw that out there as a thought on how you might think about your life in the simpler way, because that is where, when you have major conflicts of time and priorities, when you fall back to your values. And I would encourage you to make the puzzle pieces, the pie pieces, whatever it is for you, when you step back, or the pyramid pieces, all of that, customize that for yourself. When you're in conflict of different competing priorities, which is a lot of life, is those competing priorities, that is how you can get clarity with what you should do next. You're kind of falling back on your foundations, your values, what you set forth, your intention. Those types of things can make it much clearer. And in that way, you're cultivating your inner self-coach or self-coaching. When it comes to managing holiday stress, this is particularly poignant for me. So in my background, one of the reasons why I became a coach, as I have said, if you've been to other sessions, is that I had lost my son 18 years ago in a car accident, and he was 9 years old, and my 7-year-old son survived. So we lost Jack tragically, and life changed forever. And Stephen was my surviving son. And so it was tragic and we were blessed at the same time. So holidays have been very difficult over the years with that loss. There's this bittersweet component to a lot of things in life. And so I think about that. I'm going to talk about grief a little bit, specifically loss at the holidays, a little bit more. But so holiday stress can come in a lot of forms. So there's the busyness, the huge to-do list on top of an already busy day. But there's also so much joy, right? So it can be so joyful. It can be so stressful. It's everything. It can be so emotional. So I thought about that intention, to-do list, gratitude sandwich, as I like to call it, that's another way to do it, because your intention is to have a beautiful holiday, no doubt, right? You have a lot of things on your to-do list, and then you're grateful for family, friends, finance that helps you have a good holiday. And that, and then that might be a challenge, and that might not be there, and that could be causing you stress as well. But if you think about that, you can kind of manage your mindset all along through all the busyness. Another thought was to be mindful. Your presence is a present, is a great expression this time of year. Be mindful, be present. I know I've fallen into this problem of doing the opposite on many occasions. If I was hosting, I'm working so hard to make the perfect holiday and make my house as good and accommodating as it could be. By the time guests arrive, I'm exhausted and I'm ready for it to be over, and I'm rushing through it rather than being mindful about what my intention was to have a beautiful holiday. So I need to enjoy that holiday as well. And be present for people talking to me rather than, picking up and doing too much of that, to actually sit at my own party. I don't know if that resonates with some of you. It's a challenge. And of course, perfectionism fits right in there too. We want things to be perfect, and we do need to drop perfectionism because it does make us resentful. It does maybe interfere with our mindful presence, and we may just really want to rush it through and get over. In addition, we can have challenging relatives and negativity and difficulty. And you do want to have a note, like, think about holiday stress. What are your biggest stressors? Make sure you're conscious about it. It might be some toxic relatives or situations, difficult negativity, but do protect yourself to the best of your ability. Maybe it's not 5 hours with that challenging person. It's maybe 3 hours. Just a thought on a boundary. What are you doing? Maybe there are things that you do that you don't want to do. Maybe that's what you need to protect yourself from. At what point do you get to make your own decisions versus obligations? Another is cultivating compassion. We have another slide on that, just a quick thing, and then loss at the holidays. So cultivating compassion, this is a mindful meditation. It's just a segment of a mindful meditation. So if you've ever had a cultivating compassion or loving kindness meditation, if you've ever heard that, there's a phrase that keeps repeating in this guided meditation. May you be happy. May you be free. May you find peace. May you live with ease. And they might be just versions of this if they're not all exactly the same. The concept is we wish ourselves that, we wish that to someone we admire, love, our friends, our family. Of course, you feel that way. You wish this for maybe people you don't know, but you see all the time, the grocery store clerk, the neighbor that you really don't know, but you see them walk by your house, someone who's just an acquaintance in this world. And you also want this for the most frustrating person in your life. And so a loving kindness meditation takes you through wishing that person well on all those levels. And in that way, we're cultivating more compassion, and compassion, again, being wanting to alleviate someone else's suffering. So the person that causes you the most irritation in life, whoever that is someone suffering. Probably. And so this is a way for you to move where the brain wants to go, which is ruminating on it and being irritated by it, to moving it into a better place. Like that person's suffering, they're causing your suffering. You want to alleviate your suffering and you want to alleviate their suffering. And there's nothing maybe specific you can do, but you can have this little wish. So use this as a little prayer if you need it through the holidays, to just even the most frustrating person, you can say, may you be happy, may you be free, may you find peace, may you live with ease. And when I say it, not necessarily to them, but in your head, as you extend these wishes, these well wishes to yourself and the well wishes to even the most frustrating person. And a note with loss on the holidays. So I've lived this experience. I know a lot of you have as well. It's hard to manage the priorities when you're in a holiday time, when you're in great pain. And especially if you've had a recent loss, my heart goes out to you. I'm thinking of you this holiday season. Be very gentle with yourself. This is an expression a lot of people say at a time of loss, at wakes and funerals. I never truly knew how important it was. Be gentle with yourself. You need to rest when you can. Be open to finding adjustments for the holiday that feel as right as it can be for you, open to help of others. So there are so many things that have to be done. There's a lot of busyness and you may not have the energy for it. Accept help where there's help. Make adjustments. As you can imagine, after I lost my son, Jack, that was September, Christmas was coming. I had a complete panic attack over pulling out the decorations and decorating the tree. I knew I needed to do something because Stephen was just turning 8 and we had this huge tragedy, and he was so little that he was looking to us to say, like, am I okay? We're in pain and we're grieving, but am I okay? Am I safe? And if my mom's okay, I'm okay, was really his position. And I had to I grabbed a small artificial tree, so smaller, but kind of tall, but skinny. And it just made it easier for me to decorate. And I bought some new decorations, and he wasn't heartbroken that I didn't pull out all the ones that, were picture ornaments and things like that, or things that he made in school. So it looked like a holiday, but it was an adjustment I needed to make. Be gentle with yourself. Open to change and rest. And also know it's not always going to be that way. It wasn't always that different tree for us. There was a time when we got back to it. Just use that as an example. So thinking about all of you this holiday season, wanted to leave some time for you to ask questions. I've enjoyed doing this series so much with all of you. Thankful and grateful to Kelly and Mary McLaughlin for setting this up. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. On this last slide, and actually after we're done, I'm going to send the slides to Kelly for everyone. But on this last slide, my contact information, feel free to reach out to me. Actually, you can schedule a consultation with the Calendly link that you see there too to schedule. And special shout out to the Hudson Headwaters Health Network. They are one of my Coach on Call clients. So if you are attending and you're from the health network, there are coaching sessions available to you as part of your benefits for employee assistance, and it's confidential and private. And the company has they've retained hours this year in 2022, and I'm blessed to say in 2023 as well. We're going forward, and I'm meeting more and more of you. If you do not work for Hudson Headwaters, you certainly can share my information with anyone in HR and benefits and mention that because I do work with organizations and continue to do that, and love to collaborate with organizations to bring well-being, whether it's series like this as part of a wellness program and programmings, speaking at conferences and company meetings perhaps, or through Coach on Call, that employer retained employee assistance. So I enjoyed being with all of you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so I can see you all again and see if there are any questions. Okay, and also, yeah, feedback. Please share your feedback. Open to any thoughts too about what you might want to see in 2023. And welcome the questions. You know, maybe it is questions. So how do we go forward? You've had a lot of content now. And I'm always thinking of 2.0 type of things, or 3.0 for people who've had the basics, and how we can go deeper into coaching. And sometimes it's even with more coaching questions and coaching topics. If people are willing to share, I can build around what you'd like to see and what you'd like to hear.
And folks, feel free to unmute yourself if you have a specific question, or if it's easier to type the question in the chat as well.
And perfection is an imperfect concept, Dean. Thank you. That is so true. Love it.
One of the things that I noticed that was helpful to me, I was spending some time focusing on some self-care and thought that I really didn't do very much and felt bad about that. But I stopped, and I had a training sheet or whatever, and I was reading through it and working on it with someone. And I was so glad I did that, because it helped me to realize how many things I do that are self-care, and just do them automatically. You know, taking care of your car so that you don't break down on the side of the road. That's self-care. Making sure that, you know, I've either got my credit card or some cash or something with me whenever I go out. That's self-care. What if I break down? So that list of things that I went through and realized I do a lot more than I thought I did. I just needed to vary it a little bit and do some more, a little bit different things. But it was really good for me to recognize that I was doing more than I thought I was.
Good self-compassion too. So you notice the brain starting to want to beat you up. You try, right? The brain is just going, what's the negative? What's the problem? This is a problem. Rather than, it's like a but versus an and, right? No, I'm doing these things, and there's maybe more that I can do, but to not be knocking yourself. Yeah, we could apply that to anything that your brain starts to beat yourself up about. I like that you said, make a list, get clear on what you're really doing, and cultivate that, and then move forward. It's an and. Oh, thank you, Lauren. So yeah, I'm glad that this has been helpful and you've appreciated that. That's great. That's deeply meaningful for me, honestly. Very, very meaningful.
Kim, I always look forward to this time, because I always find one thing that I can bring home and use. So I've spent a lot of time in the past 2 years on doing some self-care and all of that. And it makes a difference.
Because it accumulates, or in both directions. The
Yes.
self-care you sprinkle throughout, when you get intentional about it, accumulates and helps you have good well-being. If you don't, that accumulates and leads to resentment, burnout, exhaustion, depletion.
Exactly. And even now too, you know, you have things that come up in your life and, you know, can rattle you. But I find myself turning myself around a lot quicker. So instead of, you know, getting dwelled into these things that might, and it's probably most likely outside of work here, but still you take the stuff every place. So when I find myself switching myself around and being able to do things better, tolerate things better, move on with things than I did before. So
That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that. That is cultivating your inner life coach, your inner well-being coach, to be able to recognize with more clarity that hanging on or kind of resisting or ruminating, which the brain does naturally, like we've got that, then when we realize that it's actually okay and it still is who we are, to maybe let go a little quicker and say, I don't want to hurt myself with things I can't control or not control, right? Wow, I thank you all. Thank you for everyone who's been willing to comment and share, and then also to anyone who's been listening to the recordings after. And I look forward to seeing you in 2023. And I'll turn it to Kelly because you might have some final thoughts.
Absolutely. I'm going